Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Advancement Center, and welcome to the world of magic and miracles, and the final chapter of The Magic of Life, The Next Step, Volume 2, by Robert Young. So here we go, Chapter 22. Suzanne sat quietly and watched the Jeremy disappear into the distance. The children had found it difficult to translate the time differences between Sydney and Norwich, and each had suddenly developed different sleeping patterns. Jamie had not slept for several days and was now catching up on her lost sleep. Samuel quickly caught on to the Norwich time schedule and was sleeping for short periods and waking up, ready to start a new day. Martha went into a random pattern and could only sleep while Suzanne was nearby. Martha squirmed a little, and Suzanne wrapped her small blanket tightly around her. She immediately settled as she felt the security of something familiar. There was something about this blanket that Suzanne could not explain. It was the only thing that traveled with them in both directions and turned up even when Suzanne had no recollection of packing it. Samuel ran into the room at full pace and launched himself onto the lounge. Suzanne reached out and in one swift motion caught him and pulled him to a seated position with her arm tightly wrapped around him. Samuel let out a squeal of excitement, and Suzanne quickly signaled him to not wake Martha. He responded immediately and cuddled into Suzanne with his arms around his little clown doll, and he never let it out of his sight. It was then that Suzanne suddenly realized that the blanket and the cuddly clown were gifts to the children, left on that special night after Simeon first appeared in their life. The atmosphere changed, and Suzanne gradually drifted off to sleep with Martha on her lap and Samuel cuddled into her side. It was late afternoon when Jamie woke and wandered into the living room. The sun was still high in the sky, and the garden seemed to be the major feature of attraction. Jamie headed towards the garden and was surprised to find Suzanne, Martha, and Samuel asleep on the lounge that looked out across the waters of the harbor. She was not fully awake, and with a slow, purposeful movement, she dragged 3 pillows from the daybed to the front of the lounge and cuddled up to join Suzanne in a sleep that lasted throughout the night. It was 6 a.m. when Suzanne woke with a feeling of newness that she had never experienced before. Her body felt bright and comfortable, and there was no sign of discomfort from sleeping all night in a seated position. She looked down and saw Jamie and wondered what time she had joined them. Her spirits were high, and her normal concern about sleeping while the children were awake seemed to hold no weight at all. Jamie stirred and looked up at Suzanne with a big smile. Suzanne waved, and Jamie returned the silent communication. Within moments, Martha's eyes flicked open, and her body came to life with a sudden jerk. Samuel responded immediately, and the lounge became a writhing mass of waking children. Suzanne stretched and moved with the children, then slid off the lounge, dragging them both on top of her to join Jamie in amongst her pillows. The noise erupted as they all hit the floor and rolled over on top of Jamie. Laughter mingled with all sorts of grunting and squealing as they wrestled their way into the normality of their happy family life. Jamie was the first to jump to her feet. She stood at a distance, ready to run. Suzanne jumped up, and Jamie ran as fast as she could before Suzanne caught her and landed her back on the pillows. Martha was next, and Jamie pulled down Samuel before he could even run. Suzanne finally lay on her back on the floor and declared that the children had won the battle. She was worn out. The 3 children sat on the floor and amongst the pillows, looking at Suzanne, who was playing defeated. Their eyes moved from one to the other and back to Suzanne as they waited for something else to come. The doorbell rang, and everyone scattered as Suzanne leapt to her feet and yelled, "Boo!" to complete the game. Suzanne pulled her shirt and slacks into line and ran her fingers through her hair as she walked towards the door. "Who is it?" she yelled through the closed door. "Marjorie," came the muffled reply from the other side. Suzanne opened the door and stood back for Marjorie to enter. "Come in," she said with an obvious sense of welcome. Marjorie's face was white. She seemed very disturbed. "I know it is a bit early," she said as she entered the room, "but I can't locate Tom. He must have got up through the night and gone somewhere. His phone and his clothes are still beside the bed, and all the doors were locked from the inside. This has never happened before." "Come and sit down," Suzanne said as she coaxed her towards the table. "I am sure that Carmel Roberts can tap into the flow and read what is happening around you." Marjorie sat down and her eyes started to glaze. "He tried to tell me something last night," she said slowly, "but I was too mad at him to listen. He is obsessed with this new boat of the future concept. He spends all of his time with Adam and none with me." Suzanne listened and felt herself slowly slipping into the salamander mode. "Marjorie," Suzanne interjected quickly, "you will have to look after the children. This has something to do with the heritage line. I will look for Tom." The moment she stopped talking, the door to the salamander suite slid open, and Marjorie watched a shadow of Suzanne walk into the suite as the real Suzanne gathered the children and told them that Marjorie would be looking after them for a couple of hours. Suzanne walked out into the main corridor and immediately disappeared as the salamander suite door slid closed. Marjorie had been exposed to the movements of those associated with the heritage line before, but she had never been personally involved. She shook her head and tried to remain calm. Jamie pulled at Marjorie's skirt to get her attention. "Mommy said, listen, and you will hear her speak," Jamie said with a quiet voice. "Hold my hand and I will help you." Marjorie sat on the kitchen chair and reached out to hold Jamie's hand. Suzanne's voice blasted through so clearly that Marjorie pulled her hand away with shock. Jamie stood calmly with her hand still extended and waited for Marjorie to try again. "This is perfect," Suzanne's voice echoed clearly through her consciousness. "Now all you have to do is speak to me and gradually let Jamie's hand go as you speak. It will feel a bit strange, but it is part of your heritage, and you will soon see how easy it is." Marjorie didn't know where to look as she spoke to Suzanne. "Where are you? I don't know where to look or where to focus. I can't just talk to nothing, you know," Marjorie replied with an involuntary easiness. "Can I ring on the phone or something? I don't know what I am doing." "Well, you seem to know exactly what you're doing," came Suzanne's reply. "It is easy, isn't it?" "It might be easy for you, Suzanne," Marjorie exclaimed as she put her hands on her hips. "You have special assistants. How am I ever going to learn this stuff?" Suzanne was quiet for a moment. Marjorie looked down and realized that she had let go of Jamie's hand. "Are you still there?" she said with a slight panic. "I am still here," replied Suzanne. "You see, you are a natural." "Where are you, Suzanne? Have you found Tom?" Marjorie asked quickly. "I can't tell you where I am, but I can tell you that I have found Tom and he is okay." "Where is he? Can I talk to him?" Marjorie cut in without giving Suzanne a chance to finish. "He is on the island," Suzanne continued, "working very hard at the boathouse of Willie and John Broltage." "What is he doing there? Can I talk to him?" Marjorie interjected again. "Slow down, Marjorie," Suzanne said calmly. "You have to bring back your multidimensional intelligence and allow this all to fall into place. I can't deal with the communication. I will have Carmel contact you when you have settled with the full picture. Or you can wait until tomorrow and see Tom back in his bed again." Marjorie went silent for a moment and the panic subsided. "He will be back tomorrow?" she queried. Yes, replied Suzanne. In the meantime, he is preparing the Michael to carry the Voltage Special through the vortex without detection. Thank you, Suzanne, Marjorie said quietly. I am sorry I panicked. I am okay now. Marjorie's head started to feel light. It was the same sensation that she felt when Suzanne first experienced the opening of the salamander suite. She looked at Jamie, and sure enough, she was indicating that she should look at the salamander suite. What is it, Jamie? Marjorie inquired as she raised herself out of the kitchen chair. Carmel wants to talk to you, Jamie replied as she headed towards the salamander suite. Marjorie had forgotten about the other children and was shocked back into reality when she saw them sitting with their legs crossed on the floor outside the closed door of the salamander room. They were looking at a blank wall and listening to something that Marjorie could not hear. Jamie, what is happening? Marjorie said in a panic. Jamie reached up and took Marjorie's hand. In an instant, the panic disappeared and excitement filled its place. The wall disappeared and two pictures appeared, one of Carmel talking to Samuel and Martha, and one of Tom holding a big roll of drawings and walking through a massive boat shed towards a ship called Michael. Carmel changed focus and spoke directly to Marjorie. Hello, Marjorie, she said clearly. I am just telling the children a story. Jamie can listen if she wants. Marjorie turned to Jamie and lifted her eyebrows as if to say, Well, do you want to listen? Jamie skipped across the floor, sat with her legs crossed beside Martha, and immediately became engrossed in the story that Marjorie still could not hear. Carmel continued, Suzanne holds many connections for me at the moment, so we can continue our conversation without disturbance. Marjorie wanted to continue asking questions, but something prevented her from saying a word. You are about to communicate with another dimension that is capable of operating on a different time base to you, to the one you are in. The only way that can happen is if the time base is locked, the way it is in Norwood, and the outside influence is limited to reduce interference. Tom is outside of Norwood and has limited communication. The only way you can communicate is either through a relay, through me, or transport to our location. If you wish to talk to Tom, you will be prevented from mentioning anything about your location or what is happening at your end. His reality here is totally different to his reality where you are. If you wish to transport here and join Tom, then Suzanne is in a position right now to do that without disturbance to anyone. Marjorie's mind started to race, and all the difficulties started to appear out of nowhere. She needed more information to make a decision either way, but for some reason she could not speak. Okay, Carmel continued. It is obvious that relay through me will not work, so we had better do it the other way. I can keep the children occupied until Suzanne returns. You will be transported into Tom's reality. You are staying in Willie's house until he returns, and then you will wake up in your own bed with a much richer experience than you are having now. Before Marjorie could make a move, the picture in front of her changed, and she could see herself walking alongside Tom with a bright safety vest and an orange hard hat. The picture suddenly zoomed up on her, and in a moment, she was in the shed, looking at a gaping hole in the side of the Michael where the new submarine access was being prepared for the voltage special. A moment of confusion overtook Marjorie, and then she felt the reality take over her life. It was seamless. Watch your step, Marjorie, said Tom. You can easily slip on this stuff. Hey, Reggie, get this plastic cleaned up. We don't want people slipping on it. You are okay, Marjorie, Carmel's voice came from the distance. No one knows you were somewhere else a moment ago. Enjoy your stay. Marjorie blinked, and the events of the morning were immediately replaced by the reality of her new location. What I had in mind, Tom, Marjorie said confidently, was to lift this framework in now. Take all the welding gear with it then close up the ship and finish the structural work from the inside. Tom looked at Marjorie for a moment, then reached out to take the roll of drawings. Show me your plan, said Tom with deep interest. If we still have room to work, it will save a lot of extra precautions to keep the plating straight. Marjorie laid out the drawings and started to present details that she had never seen before. Her confidence was unbelievable, and her eye for detail gave her a lift every time she pointed something out to Tom. I had them use the new laser cutter to remove the ship's side, so the plate will be as good as new, Marjorie continued. If we stitch it back with laser before we preheat for the final weld, it will maintain its original shape. Marjorie leaned over and rolled back the next drawing. The detailed layout of the inner space had a colored overlay of the new framework, welding equipment, and submarine entrance, all in its final position with various construction steps detailed in shaded gray. As she pointed out the various steps, her identification card popped out of its transparent plastic sleeve and landed on the floor. John was quick to notice and picked it up without disturbing the conversation. He unconsciously used the card as a pointer to identify the various parts of the drawing and then realized it was in his hand. Here, you will need this to remember who you are, Tom said with a smile on his face. Marjorie laughed and took the card. To her surprise, it read, Brotich Marine, Marjorie Jacobs, Design Manager. Have you heard from Adam Holmes? She said slowly as she returned the card to its sleeve. Yes, he rang earlier on the new telephone system. The new promotional movie is almost complete. All the changes you suggested have been included and will be ready for viewing when we get back. Marjorie loved this new reality. She was the main focus in Tom's life, and he seemed to recognize that she was much more capable than Adam Holmes had ever been. In the middle of all this, however, there was a dread of losing all of this when she returned to her bed in Australia. Tom leaned over, lifted her hard hat, and kissed her on the forehead. Marjorie, you are brilliant. Let's get this thing done. Reggie, give the men a break. We will need to relocate all these cables through the deck access. We are about to close this baby up. Yes, Reggie shouted as he threw his fist in the air. Finish welding that frame, Phil, then have a break. Everyone planning meeting in the crib room in 30 minutes. Reggie's voice cut through the noise and reached every tradesman and assistant in the 90-foot square work area. A series of responses indicated that everyone was in tune. I am so glad that this new reality is ours to keep, Tom said as he rolled up the drawings and handed them to Marjorie. Heinrich said it would be better than I could imagine. Suzanne entered the apartment and looked directly at the three children engrossed in Carmel's story. There was not a movement, even when she announced that she was back. The wall was glowing with moving colors that seemed to come from inside the salamander suite. As she moved closer, she could see that Carmel had tapped into Marjorie and Tom in one picture and Bill and the crew of the Jeremy in another. The two dimensions were interacting in a display of colors that had the three children mesmerized as they witnessed what was happening in each tiny world. Suzanne sat behind the children and joined them in witnessing what was happening to Bill and all her friends. After several minutes, the pictures began to fade, and Suzanne and the children drifted slowly back to their normal surroundings. Samuel jumped up quickly and with an excited, low-pitched scream, ran past Suzanne at a convenient distance for her to catch him with one arm. Gotcha. Now what are you going to do? Suzanne said with playful authority. Samuel quickly folded up into a ball and rolled away from Suzanne. I'm going to get away, he said quickly as he stood ready to run again. Suzanne was surprised at how Samuel had taken the lead to continue their game and looked towards Jamie as she automatically reached out and grabbed Samuel's leg. Samuel fell to the floor and totally relaxed, as he always did when the game was over. What is it, Jamie? Suzanne said, as she detected her concern. Is there something I should know? Jamie looked around slowly and replied in her most serious voice, We have to go home with Bill. We don't belong here. What do you mean, Jamie? Where did you get that from? Suzanne inquired as she slid herself and Samuel closer. The fairy said we don't belong here. I want to go home with Bill. Jamie's voice started to break up and the tears flowed quickly as she spoke. Suzanne moved quickly and took Jamie in her arms. The power of Suzanne's heritage suddenly burst into action, and she found herself standing in Bill's cabin on the Jeremy. Bill walked in the door the moment she appeared. They held one another briefly while Suzanne passed on Jamie's revelation, then stood looking at each other for a brief moment. Bill reached for the intercom. Turn her around, Willie, he said with authority. We are going back for Suzanne and the children. Roger, came the reply, and the ship started to turn immediately. Suzanne blinked, and she was back in the living room of apartment 701 with Jamie in her arms. Okay, she said quickly as she started to move. Start packing. Bill is coming back to pick us up. We are going home to the island. The children responded immediately and ran towards their room, skipping and jumping just as they did when they were playing with the fairies. Suzanne watched and marveled at the simplicity of each of their lives. There was a need to explore a new destiny, but it was more important to select the simple life that was obviously best for all of them. Her heart lifted as the door to the salamander suite opened and emanated the same glow as the jewelry box that was held in the bank safety deposit box. Suzanne understood and looked past the glow to the picture on the wall. The sudden impulse from somewhere within Suzanne gave the command to seal the room, and the door slid closed without leaving a trace of its presence. The adventure of a lifetime was over, and all the mystery of the heritage line was closed to everyone. Suzanne felt relieved, and a new sense of excitement began to drift into her field. The island that she loved so dearly had been handed back to her in its original form, and her real job of maintaining its simplicity was about to begin. Well, that's the end of The Magic of Life, Volume 2, The Next Step. A fantastic book by Robert Young, along with the same title of Volume 1. Both books channeled from the outer reaches of the universe through Robert to the pages in these books. It's been my honor to read them, and I highly recommend you owning your own copy of both books. The story pulls you in so gently and lovingly because it relates to every person's life. You are every character in the magic of life. You are every experience. And you are looked after by beings such as Simeon and other masters who are orchestrating your future, your amazing future. So cheers, everyone. It's been an honor. And from all of us at the Advancement Center, and from Robert and Simeon, I'm David Best, and I'm wishing you a perfect life, perfect health, and a magic future. Thank you.